mute myself.
Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of February 16th, 2022. In accordance with the Governor's Healthy Washington guidelines and to protect city employees and members of the public from transmission of COVID-19, City Council is conducting our weekly council meeting remotely. We are prepared to reopen the council chambers to public meetings when public health considerations indicate it is safe to do so. There are several ways in which you can engage with the council and participate in our meetings. To watch or participate in our remote meetings, you may watch council meetings live on Comcast Channel 21 or Frontier Channel 29. You may also watch live online at www.everettwa.gov/citycouncil, where you may also watch past meetings. You may call in to listen to the live meeting at any point by dialing 425-616-3920. Conference ID is 724-887-726#. You may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Once you select the register here to provide comment via Zoom link, you'll need to fill out the form completely if you wish to provide a public comment at any future meeting. After the form is submitted, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit this form at least 30 minutes prior to our meeting time. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by submitting comments in writing to council@everettwa.gov. For assistance, please contact the council office at 425-257-8703 or email Deb Williams at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. Please note that we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Outside of our meetings, members of the public are always welcome to contact council members or provide comments or concerns on any matter via email at council@everettwa.gov or by calling the City Council office. Again, that number is 425-257-8703. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Toohey.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Fossey.
Here.
And President Stonecipher.
Here. I would like to call on Councilmember Toohey to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now I will call on Councilmember Zarlingo to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Stohopsh people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they've hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of January 28th, 2022?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Thank you.
Councilmember Toohey seconds the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the January 28th minutes. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Toohey.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fossey.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 9th, 2022?
Councilmember Zarlingo moves to approve the minutes of February 9th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Abstain?
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stone Cipher.
Abstain? Thank you. And now we'll move on to Mayor Franklin. Good evening, Mayor.
Right, good evening, Council. I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to council comments and liaison reports, and we'll start with Councilmember Tui.
Thank you. Well, we had our first Public Safety Committee meeting this afternoon and had a great report update from the two chiefs, Templeman and DeMarco. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
I have a little request, and so here goes. And by the way, good evening, everybody. In 2019, just before COVID, Council passed a resolution regarding project labor agreements, or PLAs, as I will refer to them. At that time, the threshold for considering a PLA for city projects was $5 million. Plus, at that time, a PLA was not required for a city project, only considered. With the Arpa funds and infrastructure funds coming soon, we will hopefully have more city projects that can utilize workers that are guaranteed living wages and benefits, as well as apprenticeship programs to train people for future projects. We'll also need people to work on projects that will guarantee to the city not to strike. This country is not suffering a worker shortage. It is suffering a shortage of jobs willing to pay people a living wage. I would like to utilize legal to draft an ordinance to lower the threshold for a PLA to $1 million, include apprenticeship language and possibly CWA language or community workforce agreement language. And with that, I need a second to use.
Councilmember Fosse, second.
Thank you. And with that second, that means we get to work on some stuff. So I look forward to that. And that is all I have tonight.
And Council President, legal will
Yes.
contact Councilmember Vogely tomorrow, and we'll work with her to develop that ordinance for your consideration.
Thank you. And I would ask that when that comes back, it would be helpful for us to understand the original ordinance. It's been some time since we have approved that, and I don't actually recall what the process was for determining. I know that it was to be considered. A project had to consider a PLA, but it would be nice to have a briefing on just sort of the terms as they stood prior to any new changes that come forward.
And we can, coincidentally, we have an internal meeting tomorrow just to make sure that we're using the existing resolution in the way that it is intended. So this is timely.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We can look forward to getting that on on a future agenda. Anything else, Councilmember Vogely?
No, sorry, I thought I said I was done.
Okay.
I'm done for this time. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Good evening, and thank you. I had a chance to pop into the Bayside Neighborhood Association meeting yesterday, and they're doing a series of meetings for the efficiency study for the Everett Police Department. So they're doing weekly meetings. I believe this next week will be their last one in the series. And it's a group from Matrix Consulting that's working to compile input from community members about their interactions, perceptions, and ways that our Everett Police Department can improve, or things that they're already doing really well. So I'm really excited about the input that they're receiving from the community and the great just viewpoints that they're able to hear and put their results together. So it's exciting. And I also then I was only there for a little bit and popped over to the library board meeting, which was at the exact same time. And there was a really great discussion with folks. Mayor Franklin was able to join, and I could hear from the people on the board about things that they like about Everett, things that they'd like to see improve. And it's just a great way to hear from local community leaders of ways that the city's doing an awesome job. And one of the things that heard from a few folks was the need for connecting North and South Everett. And so I'm looking forward to ways that we can, especially coming out of COVID, to bolster just one whole Everett. So looking forward to that. The library does have KN90 masks available. They worked in conjunction with the Snohomish Health District to distribute masks. So if folks are in need of masks, they can visit the Everett Public Library, either branch, and receive an allotment. And the Everett Public Library has also recently received some citizen science kits, which I think are very exciting. So you can check out an entire kit to do a science experiment at home. And so I would encourage folks to check that out. And it sounds like the age range is anything from younger kids all the way up to adults, and fun stuff like measuring light in the night sky and other exciting things. So if you're looking for an activity, head on over to the library. And also wanted to send a shout out to library staff for the hard work that they've been doing, especially during the Omicron surge in January, to keep the library moving smoothly and seamlessly. So that's my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, one of these days I'll figure that mute thing out. Thank you very much. I visited the Harborview Seahurst Glenhaven Neighborhood Association yesterday, and thanks to Chief Templeman's staff, they gave a great presentation on dealing with graffiti and gang activity. There was a high interest in that group, so good job for the police department. Also, the Public Safety Committee meeting met today, like Councilmember Tui said. I just want to say how impressed I am with both police and fire's efforts in the recruiting to diversify the workforce. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, several things. First, for those who haven't read the story in the Herald on several days ago about the animal shelter donation by Sue Strong, it was a record-sized donation, $61,000 to Everett's animal shelter from a Herald employee, and I think that I'd like that to go well recognized. I've adopted a cat from a shelter and supported some shelters with work and donations before. I think they do a great job. Something that's really important for some animal members of our family. So thanks again to Sue Strong and her efforts there. I attended the latest meeting of the Puget Sound Regional Council's Transportation Policy Committee meeting. They're working on the regional transportation plan and collecting comments, which we as the board will be, or as the committee will be evaluating after February 28th, I think March and April. And I'll report more on that when I have more specifics that'll be enlightening. I've also attended the first meeting of the Joint Everett Transit and Community Transit Consolidation Exploration Committee. This was an initial briefing, and I'll just say that it's another example of how every choice we make seems to have complexities, trade-offs, benefits, and costs, and the committee will be working hard on that in the months and probably more than a year to come. There will be periodic reports out in that to give you an idea of where we're going and what we're finding. And then lastly, the Health District, attended the Health District Board meeting. And the one thing that's remarkable there is we'll be needing to replace the health officer, Dr. Spitters, who's been serving there for something over 2 years, I think, more or less, sadly aligned his tenure there with the pandemic. I can't say I envy him on that. That's a tough road. I think he's done well, and it's going to be some work for us to ensure not just getting the medical knowledge in a health officer, but specifically the deep expertise in public health and the ability to communicate that in all the forums that are required. So a tall order, and we'll be taking that on in the weeks and months to come. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Thank you. Last week, I was able to get a Sound Transit Snohomish County overview that was really helpful. And I was also thrilled to be elected to the Snohomish County Regional Law and Justice Council. And this week I was able to attend the Public Safety Committee that Councilmember Tui was talking about earlier. So that was very informative. I'm looking forward to future ones. And then I had the Planning Commission, which unfortunately kept me from going to some of my neighborhood meetings that I usually attend, but it was very informative, getting another kind of perspective on the comprehensive plan periodic updates. So that's all the comments I have tonight. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Well, I too attended the Community Transit Everett Transit Joint Policy Committee meeting to kick off our work in reviewing the possibilities of a combination of some or all of our services in the future, and look forward to that work over the next year or more. They laid out quite a lengthy calendar that will certainly span into next year. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, as we are now seeing reductions in COVID cases and hospitalizations, I suspect the governor will have some announcements about lifting some of the sanctions that have been on our movement and gathering. It's time for the City Council to start to prepare to reopen our meetings to in-person in the council chambers. And I will be putting on our March 2nd agenda discussion topics so that council can discuss how we will reopen and what kinds of procedures we may want to take into account when we do that. We'll have some more information at that time. And I would also request that administration, I know they've got the information, but be present at that meeting to help us understand some of the technical capabilities that we have in terms of allowing video and audio participation in the meetings, even if we are present in the council chambers. So look forward to having that conversation. And again, we'll get some more information about what are reasonable accommodations and protocols that we should be taking into account. Do we have an update from administration this evening?
Council President Stonecipher, no update from administration tonight. We're happy to be prepared to provide some information on March 2nd. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to City Attorney comments. Mr. Hall, do you have anything for us this evening?
The only report is that we're working with administration to revise the council procedures in accordance with the council retreat. Other than that, no report, and there is no executive session tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Deb Williams, have we received comments from the community for public comment?
President Stonecipher, we have received no written comment. I did receive a comment from someone wishing to sign up to speak, and I'm not sure this is them, so I need to clarify first. All it has is D on their name as far as waiting to speak. If you are Miss She, can you identify yourself, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Is this Mary She?
Yeah, yes, that is me. I didn't know, I just found the sign out sheet and I just wanted to attend in order to obtain this link, and it was forcing me to put down something that I want to comment on, but I don't actually have anything I want to comment on. I just want to participate.
Okay,
thank you.
Great. Thank you. President Stonecipher, I have nobody wishing to speak and I have no written comment. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the 7 consent items?
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for the 7 consent agenda items. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. We have 3 items on for proposed action. Items 8 and 9 have been read into the record prior to tonight's meeting, but item 10 is on for first reading. So I'll read that into the record. Item 10, Council Bill 2202-04, first reading. Adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled WFP Portal 4 Improvements, Fund 336, Program 018, and repealing ordinance number 3800-21. The third and final reading will be on March 2nd, 2022. Do we have any questions on any of the proposed action items? If so, unmute yourself and make yourself known. Hearing none, we will move on to item 11. Item 11 is a public hearing. I'll read the item and open the public hearing. Before I ask if anyone has signed up to speak on this item, I'll ask staff if there are any further comments. And after the public has an opportunity to speak, I'll go down to the roll to see if there are any council members who have any further comments. So item 11 is adopt the 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Prose Plan. Is anyone, do we have a staff report tonight? Oh, I see Bob Leonard here. Director
Go ahead.
Leonard.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Leonard, Parks Facilities Director. We don't have any additional comments. I do want to once again thank the mayor and thank council for all of the support and all of the input. I really think that that has really made this plan much better in the long run. And thank you. We here to answer any questions if there are any questions.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item? Deb Williams.
President Stonecipher, we do not. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at this point, I'll go down the roll and see if we have council members who have any further comments or questions. And that starts with Councilmember Toohey.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions or comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Hi, yes. So sorry I missed the public meeting earlier about this, but I just want to let you know and everybody else know that I'm very excited for the Prose plan, and an extreme amount of work went into it, as I'm sure you all heard. And it's a lovely 310-page pamphlet to read. But for real, I think that it is strong and sturdy, and it will be used as it'll be used. It won't just be put on the shelf, as Bob had mentioned earlier, hoping that it will be used. So yay, looking forward to the vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to also echo just a huge monumental thanks to the staff, the public, Burt Consulting, and everybody that put a hand on this project. And the final result, I had a chance to finish reading it this week, and it's just it's really amazing, and it's really exciting too, just for the city of Everett to have this guiding light for what we want to see with our outdoor spaces, especially coming out of COVID and folks excited about being outside and recreating again together. So a big thank you to everybody, and I look forward to supporting tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, I would like to ask anybody who's watching this to thumb through it. Also, you can go to the council minutes and you can see some highlights. It's very well done, and a big thanks. As many of our community members that can read and look through it, the better. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, it is indeed a colossal plan, and I congratulate and thank the group that put it together. I think this is the kind of thing that touches lots of people, so it deserves a plan of that magnitude, and I'm really happy to see that come to fruition. Several parks near me, and I just see people using them all the time. I think that's a great benefit, something that affects a lot of our community members. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Well, I second what a lot of the comments and sentiments of my other council members. And again, yes, thank you for this really comprehensive plan. And I do think that our neighbors would definitely find it insightful to thumb through it and take a close look at some of the amazing comprehensive stuff in there. So thanks so much for all your hard work on this.
Thank you. And I want to say that I mentioned before, having been involved with the parks planning Prose processes in the past, This year has been especially interesting to me because it's been so comprehensive. I really appreciate and I'm very thankful to the Burke Group for their work on this. I'm thankful to the Parks leadership and staff who really pushed for us to do a more comprehensive look, and to the Parks Board for taking the time to really put this thing together. The thing about parks is that they really touch everyone in our community. As Councilmember Zarlingo mentioned, they are one of the few free recreational opportunities that we have for our community to enjoy the open space that we have. And yet we haven't really made enough of a priority in expanding those open spaces as we look to add both residents and workers into our community over the next 30 years. It's really vital that we invest in this plan and not let it be a doorstop because it's big enough to be one, or to sit on a shelf. And so we'll look forward to thinking about how we actually fund this Prose plan and provide for greater equity of parks, facilities, and assets in our community, because it is unevenly spaced right now into really the historic parts of Everett where space was added, and a lot of the areas that we annexed from the county over the years have just not been filled in with park space. It's been identified as a problem for as long as I've been around. And so I hope that this will be the council and the administration that takes action against that. That's all the comments I have. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Councilmember Tui makes the motion to close the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Vogely seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Now, do I hear a motion to adopt the 2022 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan?
Councilmember Vogely so moves.
Councilmember Tui seconds the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to adopt the plan. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Tui,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab,
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo,
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Well, there you go, Bob. You've got lots of work to do now. Thanks so much to you and all of your staff who participated in drafting of this plan. Really appreciate all the staff time and outreach that was done. And we will be there to help support you in making the implementation plan come to fruition.
Thank you. And thank you for all the kind words as well. Thank you.
Bravo. We will move on to our council briefing agenda. These items come before the City Council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 12 is the American Rescue Plan, ARPA, proposed investments update. And we have Deputy Mayor Harper here to help us with this.
Yes, you do.
Good evening.
Thank you, Council President Stonecipher. Just 1 second. So both I and Julie Willie, our Community Development Director, will be providing the briefing for you this evening. As I believe you are all aware, but I think the last briefing we provided was in November when 4 of our 7 council members were not yet in office. I'll refresh. Last March of 2021, the U.S. Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, colloquially known as ARPA, which is delivering $350 billion in emergency funding to eligible state, local, and tribal governments to be used for COVID-19 relief and economic recovery. The City of Everett's allocation of those dollars is $20.7 million. We received the first tranche, $10,347,000 in change of our total allocation in May of 2021. We expect to receive the second allocation in May of this year. These ARPA funds represent a one-time opportunity to invest federal dollars towards our most pressing community challenges and recovery efforts that we otherwise wouldn't have funds to support as the result of COVID-19. These funds must be spent within the guidelines established by the U.S. Treasury and are separate from the city's annual budget process. To be eligible for ARPA funding, projects must align with one of the following categories. They must support the public health response, address the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. They could provide premium pay for essential workers, replace lost public sector revenues, or invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Over the past 11 months, our finance team, the mayor, and staff have participated in seminars and other trainings to understand the purpose, intent, and permissible uses of these funds. It's clear that the goal of these directly allocated dollars is not simply to fill one-time operational budget holes, further kicking the can down the road, as we've all discussed previously, but to invest in strategic, transformational initiatives that can set communities on a better trajectory for success in combating challenges that have only been exacerbated by COVID-19. I provided an update, as I mentioned earlier, in the fourth quarter of 2021, which included several areas where staff were exploring initiatives and projects for council's consideration, each in direct response to public health and safety concerns, economic recovery, and infrastructure needs, all of which have been taxed by this pandemic. We've been very deliberative to ensure that these ideas we are exploring are, to the extent possible, complementary to the investments being made by Snohomish County, as well as cities and towns throughout the county to stretch our collective allocation as far as possible to achieve the greatest impact. And for our 4 new council members, I think it's important to note Snohomish County has received approximately $160 million in federal investment through the Arpa Act compared to our city's $20 million investment. To date, council supported staff moving forward with approximately $1 million in Everett Forward grants, mainly to small businesses throughout Everett that were struggling and showed the need for increased investment to sustain their operations. Council has also approved the acquisition of 40 additional pallet shelters that happened in 2021, which occurred last fall, in the approximate dollar amount of $483,000. Other projects continue to be vetted to ensure they meet the final guidance for expanding ARPA funds, and we're confident that they are strategic and targeted for our greatest return on investment. A list of these current projects has been provided to council, I think this afternoon. I apologize that you weren't delivered that document sooner, which includes those that have matured more quickly and will be coming to council for consideration over the next few months. In addition, there are several pending projects that require further exploration, workforce capacity, and the need to just analyze federal guidance, given that Treasury, the final Treasury rules were released very late. You've received that document, but the topical areas for the public's benefit that we are working on developing further include additional investment in shelter, housing, and homelessness, certainly behavioral health services and staff, early learning, childcare. A great example of this is the Bezos Academy project, which council approved in January, was one that we thought might be ARPA eligible, but after further determination, realized wasn't. However, the dire need of childcare, and in particular, high quality early childhood education in Everett, made that a responsibility that we knew the city would take up and carry regardless of whether it was ARPA eligible. Economic recovery and Economic Development Director Dan Ernestine will be coming to council in March with a comprehensive economic development update, which will include projects that he is prioritizing based on what we have heard in terms of feedback from council and the mayor to contemplate ARPA investment and other outdoor enhancement and green infrastructure improvements that our Parks Department, Bob Leonard and others have worked on in coordination with Public Works. So with that, Julie Willie today has a couple projects that she wants to go into greater detail with council to describe that have matured to the point of potentially being action items for you in the near term. So I will turn it over to Julie, and then the two of us, of course, will be happy to answer questions of council. So with that, Julie, please.
Nick, I just have a point of clarification. Did you
Yes.
say that the list was sent out to council today? The list of projects?
Yeah, Lori, did you, I think Deb put it in
Yes.
calendar invite?
That is correct. The materials are now added to a calendar invite as they become available. So that's where you should
Thank
find.
you.
I'm happy
Okay.
to email it to you if you'd like that.
I just didn't see that in the calendar invite. All right, and I
It-
see
it's a
Councilmember
link.
Vogely has her hand up as well.
And again, like I said, I apologize, Council President. We always strive to get you documents early as possible, but these are developing.
Yeah, I just missed that they had gone to the calendar invite. Liz, did you have a question before we have Julie?
Same. It was the same. And so I was hoping
Okay.
to get it.
Lori,
As
why
an
don't you send it
Yeah.
via email
Yeah.
as well, just so that if people can't access their calendars easily from the council meeting, they can pull up their email. Thanks, Lori.
Yep.
Mayor, I just sent those out again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Okay, Julie, thank you for your patience as we figure out our system for getting documents.
Absolutely, no problem. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully successfully. So good evening. As you may recall, last month I shared with you an overview of the strategies we are deploying to help alleviate homelessness, including that we are planning to use ARPA funds to help address the setbacks, barriers, and inequities members of our city are experiencing due to COVID-19. Tonight, I want to specifically highlight two projects we are hoping to move forward, which we anticipate bringing to you for action over the next few months. The first is the expansion of shelter in Everett. Last July, we opened a pilot shelter site on city property adjacent to and managed by the Everett Gospel Mission. We started with 20 pallets and sheltered 24 people within a week. We quickly realized that this is a necessary piece of our shelter puzzle, as we had limited options for individuals who are living chronically homeless and who are ready to become sheltered. In addition, we know that there is an increased need for temporary shelter for families with children as they await permanent housing. With the initial success of the EGM site, we plan to now expand capacity at that location, and also develop 2 additional pallet shelter locations in other parts of the city. As Deputy Mayor Harper shared, last year, council approved just over $483,000 for the purchase of 40 pallet units and a portable ADA restroom trailer. In addition, 6 to 8 more pallets are being planned for. This will allow us to increase our temporary pallet shelter capacity from 20 to somewhere between 92 to 124 individuals, which would include children. We also anticipate using ARPA funds to support the capital needs and site development of the 3 sites, as well as 2 years of initial operations. With that, we anticipate the total funding package that we will be bringing to council in stages will be approximately $2.8 million. We anticipate the first request will be brought forward as a budget amendment for the site development of the Everett Gospel Mission site, which is in order to add those 20 additional pallet units and the ADA restroom. The work is being led and implemented by our Public Works team and will be completed within the next month. We anticipate the cost for these improvements will be approximately $250,000, and that the total ARPA allocation for that site will be approximately $972,000 for the expansion and continued operations. The amount of ARPA funds needed for the second site is yet to be finalized, as they are awaiting a possible appropriation from the federal budget. This federal appropriation would result in resources for their capital expenses and the purchase of the pallets. If these funds are awarded, then less city ARPA funds will be needed. Our early estimates suggest that if those funds aren't available, then we would want $415,000 of ARPA funds to help support that project. Lots of moving parts, just so you know. So as I mentioned in my previous briefing, the third pallet site is still being vetted. However, based on our past experience of developing that site with EGM, we would like to allocate $1.4 million for the development and implementation of that site, which would host up to 20 100 square foot pallet shelters, the related accessory units that they would need, as well as case management. So in addition to the variables above that may change as we seek council to approve, we also have applied for grants from the Snohomish County Office of Recovery and Resilience to support their shelter partnership program. Should we be awarded that, we will come back to council for acceptance of those funds, but it will also change the numbers that we would be seeking city ARPA funds to utilize. The second project that we seek to fund is to increase case management support to our vulnerable and unsheltered residents whose mental health and access to services have been negatively affected due to the impacts of COVID-19. The pilot project would fund a new case management coordinator position and provide funds to contract for additional community-based case managers and coordinate with community partners. The case managers will assist individuals who are unsheltered by coordinating care, advocating for best options, and any other supports that might be needed. The project goals are to improve collaborative efforts and communication amongst city departments and other community partners who assist with those the same vulnerable residents, many of whom are habitual users of our emergency, legal, and social system services. And ultimately, we strive to achieve better outcomes for those whose mental health has suffered during COVID-19. This project would expand the city's human service supports and build on the knowledge and experience gained through our community outreach and enforcement team since that program began 7 years ago. Last year alone, COA interacted with over 900 individuals in Everett who at the time of interaction were living unsheltered. The team worked diligently to create partnerships and referral points to assist individuals to meet their goals. But the need for follow-up outpaced the current staffing capacity. As a result, many individuals who have high needs were unable to receive the supports through all of the spectrum of care needs. Although some partnerships exist in Snohomish County, at times there's an access gap for case management services, as some clients don't meet criteria for specific case management. Case load referrals may be too high, and some individuals have been previously banned or deemed as non-compliant. In addition, there are access gaps for receiving mental health services and mental health treatment. Adding direct case management will help us to further support and shelter those living unsheltered in Everett. Internal case management will help address the barriers that stall an individual's process and progress or prevent a care plan from moving forward. Case management will ensure people are moving through that system so to improve their access to services and overall health outcomes. The proposed budget of $870,000 allows for a 30-month pilot program between July of 2022 and December of 2024. The first 6 months will be used for program planning and building and executing the case management contract. And the case management contract could be for 2 years between January of 23 and December of 2024. We anticipate council action will be needed in the future to approve the funding through a budget amendment or to execute future case management contracts. So with that, I will just open it back up, and both Nick and I are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. We'll go down the roll to see if there are any questions or comments, starting with Councilmember Toohey.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, one for Nick. Remind me what the how long we have to use these funds. Is it 2 years? Or is it longer than that?
Councilmember Toohey, unfortunately, if Susie's not on the line, I will give you that answer. I believe it's actually 4 years.
Okay.
To the end.
My understanding is they need to be committed through by the end of 2024. We'll confirm that and send that out via email.
Okay.
I actually indicated to Susie she didn't need to attend tonight. So.
We'll give her the night off. That's okay.
Yes.
I can wait.
So warning to never ask me a financial question.
Sorry. Okay. And then Julie, can you tell me about the Snohomish County grant, what the timing is on that? When do you think you'll know what our potential funding might be?
Well, my understanding is that they have a first round of grants that they're focusing on that are specific to shelter, and that we would be notified by the end of the month if we get that. So hopefully by the end of February is what I was told. In addition, we submitted a second grant kind of proactively because we knew that they were anticipating supporting behavioral health focus. So in addition, we've submitted a second grant, but I don't know when the timing is for that.
Okay, great. Good job.
Oh, Nick's got his hand up. He might have additional.
Nick?
Oh, I would just add to that, Councilmember Toohey, on Dan's side of the shop, we have been meeting with the county. So there are a number of other grant opportunities as well. So just to the extent that we can comprehensively respond to your question, I think there's going to be a rolling opportunity as the county receives their second $80 million allocation to both on the human services side, but also on the economic recovery and development side, access county funds to the benefit of the city. Or city businesses more
right. Great. Thank you for that. All right. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. And we go next to Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you, Nick and Julie. I have a couple questions. So the site 3 to be determined, maybe just missed it in what you were saying. We've got the 20 at EGM plus 20-ish a bathroom. And then so the site 3 to be determined is another 20 for a total of 60.
Well, math. So the math is not, it's confusing math. So the city has currently purchased 40 additional pallet shelters. 20 of them are 64 square feet. Those 20 units are allocated to go to the EGM site. In addition, we have 2,100 square foot units that we are currently working to deploy in that yet to be determined site. In addition to that, we have a faith partner who is working to establish a third site, or I call it the second site, that will have 6 to 8 100 square foot units. And we are hoping that the congressional money will pay for that. If the congressional money does not pay for that, then I anticipate I would come back to all of you and say, hey, we'd like to buy 6 to 8 more pallets for this site because the federal appropriations didn't pay for it. But I that's just Julie. I would have to obviously defer to the mayor and the administration to bring that forward. But that would be what I would think we would ask for. I know the numbers don't work out too, because also the other sites we're talking about are for people with children. And, you know, if a site ends up being single mothers with children, then that would be one adult and 1 or 2 children. So I can't tell you exactly how many people we would shelter.
Yeah.
Because if it was a site that allowed a couple with children, then it could be 3 or 4 or 5 people in a shelter. So it's a range of how many people we're going to be able to support.
And I'll just jump in and say, you know, so the city is very excited about these 3 different pallet shelter sites to serve very different populations. And so as we work with the county and our federal partners on hopefully finding funding outside the city, there still might be opportunities for the city to participate in supporting those projects, because obviously it's more than a capital. There's all these other things that the sites need to provide the services and everything. So we wanted to flag all of them for you as projects of interest as we're looking at our ARPA dollars and where we want to invest them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. That was very helpful. Let's see. I wrote down case manager, and I think that was for the 4th slide. So is a case manager a city employee, B, one of the co-ed social workers, or a police officer, or something else?
So I think I spoke of case management in regards to the pallet communities will have a component of case management. So that's separate, you know, that's related to the expansion of pallet shelters, will include a management plan that has a clear case management plan. The second bucket is case management. And right now what we're proposing is because we have a greater need in our community, and we know that there's disproportionate amounts of a problem due to COVID, that we want to use ARPA dollars as a pilot almost to see if we can add more specific case management that is hyper Everett focused to help us to move people that COET interacts with, right? COET is embedded with our police department. So they are a very specific, specialized unit that works with the police department. Our social workers and police departments work together. Their job is not to do ongoing case management and help connect people to social services in our community and help people create, you know, life plans for stability, for detox, for whatever they choose to do. So we want to add that to our kind of toolbox of resources, so to add more opportunities to make our Everett residents be successful and lessen our impact for our parks, our streets, our businesses, and our residents.
So separate from COET, Councilmember Vogel.
Separate from COET.
We're talking about something separate from COET that would likely be contracted with a nonprofit, because there's a lot of great nonprofit organizations that do this, but we would want to have the accountability of having that specific program focused on Everett residents in need.
Okay, I'm looking at the outreach, navigation, and support slide. Amount budgeted 870,000, case management lead, chart 2. So I think that is exactly what you just described. Okay, I think I understand that. There's also a new 911 that isn't 911. I think it's 988, but I can't remember if that's the correct number. And that is starting in July, which, you know what? Probably a question for another time. I was just noticing that this was also starting in July. And so that came up, and there will be new and exciting things to try and figure out. I think that's all. Oh, okay, wait. So this case management lead, I know it's a completely different scenario, but we have a new employee with the city for all of this type of work. Does that person go in with this outreach, navigation, support, pilot stuff?
I think that is the reality of yet to be determined. The pilot project is using ARPA funds, and the projected budget is for 30 months. And so we can either try and make a big impact in 30 months or we can determine that that's going to need an ongoing funding source, or we find additional funding sources to elaborate and expand on that work. But that is not, and again, Mayor Franklin may have additional comments on that point, but we are budgeting it as a pilot.
Okay.
Just using ARPA funds.
Okay. Which is not Ben.
No.
Okay.
Ben isn't
Okay.
part of the general fund. Ben was a budgeted approved full-time equivalent last year for 2022.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Just a few clarifying questions and maybe more. Julie, for the matrix showing the pallet expansions, I think I know the answer. I just want to confirm. So site 1 shows that site development would be 472,000. Site 3 development would be 900,000. Is the difference because site 3 would be basically starting from scratch, whereas site 1's already kind of had those development dollars spent?
Exactly. The first site already has the infrastructure for the electrical and the fencing and the security plan and storage and just all of those amenities that the third site will need to make sure is in place.
Great. Next question's for Nick. Sorry, I just went off camera. Bring it back. For the larger list that was sent, is there a way to get an expanded list to provide more detail of what these different line items are and what they mean and what they would entail and all sorts of the nitty-gritty fun details?
Yeah, absolutely, Councilmember Ryan. Happy to provide that. Like I said, a certain number of them have been in Julie's umbrella of influence. A certain number of them are in our Economic Development Director Dan Ernest's umbrella of influence. So, and all of them, just we are clarifying as Treasury's rules, came out relatively recently, are clarifying for compliance with the federal guidelines for what ARPA dollars can be legitimately used for. And I think I mentioned this earlier on with the Bezos Academy as an example. We were very enthusiastic early on to use federal support dollars to provide early child care and high quality education opportunities for young kids in Everett, and learned that at least that model wasn't going to be eligible. Sorry, long way of explaining an answer to a very short question, which is, yes, I will get you more detail on the projects that are delineated in the list you received that you can, react and respond to.
Yeah, Councilmember Ryan, I think this is going to be a moving target over the coming months. And so we have the short list so that you can kind of have a quick fact sheet to check where we are. We'll get you all that background, but you can expect that detail to evolve every few days as finance and legal say yes, no, maybe to different projects, and we'll try to keep you posted on that.
Great.
I mean, what I would ask of each of you, and yeah, 4 of you didn't have the benefit of our discussion in November, but what would be helpful for me, I think for the mayor, for Julie, certainly for Dan, for Lori, other team members, would be if we can hear from you all, and of course, Council President Stonecipher, Council members Tui and Vogely, what are your priority areas? Where do you want to see us topically diving into determining how we invest these dollars at a high level? Whether it's economic recovery, health and human services, housing, quality of life, placemaking, etc. That would be helpful for our staff as we continue to, over this next 2 years, revise and determine how best to invest these dollars in a way that's going to support our community to the fullest extent. So we asked that in November and we welcome it now. So please do provide us that feedback.
Sure. And lucky for you, that meeting was recorded, so we can all
You can
to
go
the
watch it
Everett
anytime you
channel
want.
and go take a
Yeah.
look at it.
I think
What
it's
would be
on
the
Netflix.
best way? What would be the best way for us to communicate what our personal and district priorities would be? Like, do you want that now?
I think
A
if
memo?
if you send it to Nick Harper, he's going to be the keeper of all the Arpa, and so we share this list with you so you kind of see what we're currently working on, and as we determine which ones are ARPA eligible, which ones we can move more quickly, we're just gonna bring those one at a time, but we don't want to just bring you one at a time projects. We want you to know that we actually have a plan. And this plan is a moving target. So as you provide feedback, that overarching plan will change to try to better match your priorities as well. But I don't want to, I guess, waste staff time on projects that aren't going to be supported long-term. So as you just email us, email Nick, say, hey, I'd really like to see focus on early learning or on tree canopy or on whatever. And then we will go, okay, great. We're going to move those up in the priority projects so that those will come back to you more quickly. And we'll hold off on these because as you see that list, we have 30 some million of projects that we're kind of navigating, but we only have 20 million to spend. So there's no way we're going to complete all of those. It's kind of based on what you tell us is your priority.
That was my exact next question. I was going to say we have 20 million and this shows a range of 18 to 35. So how are we prioritizing? I guess that answers that last question of mine. Let's see. I think Julie mentioned it earlier too. Just my last concern would be what happens after the 30-month pilot project, or what happens after the 2 years of site management, and just ways that I think especially for helping folks who are experiencing homelessness, there's as many reasons that people are experiencing homelessness as there are people experiencing homelessness, and having individual case managers to help with providing wraparound services and be the trusted messenger is really critical. So I'm glad to see that on the list. So I'm sure I'll have 1,000 other questions. So keep your eye on your inbox. Thank you.
And my only response to that, Councilmember Ryan, would be in keeping with, I think, what has been the theme since the beginning of January, which is we don't have enough resource to meet the needs of our community's population and the, what they require to be successful and to provide them a chance. So I think you've hit the nail on the head that ARPA is as I said in my preamble, a one-time opportunity to try to invest in future opportunities, but it certainly isn't a sustainable answer to how we solve Everett's problems for the future.
Thank you. We'll move on to Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you. I guess a couple questions for Julie. I'm interested in Site 2 and some details. You mentioned that's specifically designed for like families or single mothers with kids.
Site 2 is specifically at this point is families with children, and the Faith Family Village is intended to partner with Interfaith Foundation or Interfaith. I always call it Interfaith Foundation, Interfaith Shelter, Interfaith Shelter, who has our only family shelter in Everett, and also manages our Cars to Housing site, which is at a local church in Everett. And they are planning to work with Faith Family Village to then create a temporary 90-day shelter so that families can rapidly move from shelter or, cars to shelter to then housing. It's intended to be a short-term place that, in addition to the pallet shelters, has a food bank connected, has a meal program connected, has an ability to shower and have a small community space and a playground. So it's very suited for a small family shelter to move people through the process more quickly in a more safe place.
That sounds fantastic. I guess my question, I'm trying to visualize it because obviously we have our current location. Is it going to be fenced off? Is it going to be designed differently? Is it going to be in the parking lot?
Yeah. No, you know what? It would be great to introduce you to the organization and have you go out and do a site visit.
Yeah.
It's again, as far, these things are hard to place in a community because we have a lot of considerations that we have to make. But quite frankly, I think it's tucked in a nice little location that's next to some green space. They've been reaching out to the neighbors that are adjacent to them, talking with them about the fencing or the tree canopy or what do they need in order to feel safe by having, a shelter, in their community. So I'm optimistic. They do have to go through the land use review process, and we'll have to go in front of the hearing examiner for any kind of modification that they may need to do to the site. And so we're working with them on making sure that that application gets brought to our planning and building department.
Great, thank you. Great report.
Thank you. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, first, thanks to the people who've been asking questions so far. That's answered quite a number of mine and some that I didn't think to ask. Building a little bit on what Councilmember Schwab had said, if you and Councilmember Julie, if you and Councilmember Schwab arrange a site visit, please keep me involved. Keep me on the list for that. I would like to see that. I want to see this stuff up close. And in the vein of understanding physically what this is, I guess as I understand it, the original pallet shelters were 8 feet by 8 feet or 64 square feet. Typically one person, if I remembered right, per shelter. And that was, I think, from June or July last year. And then the 10 foot by 10 foot, I assume, for 100 square feet. And that will be either an adult and one or more children, or 2 adults and 1 or more children, kind of a small family thing. Am I getting the right picture in my head that way?
Absolutely. Like the 64 square foot units actually were created originally to have, I think, 2 different bunks. So it could house 2 people. And certainly they originally were created kind of for the migrant farm worker population. So very regulated by that stipulation of what kind of housing that needed to be. What we've found is individuals, 64 square feet isn't very, very much space. And so it does make most sense that one individual would be sheltered in 64 square feet, and that 100 square feet, it allows for, I believe, 4 to 6 bunks. But again, we're not creating bunk type housing. We're creating housing for families. So we would never want to put 6 bunks in a 100 square foot unit. So I think ideally it would be 1 to 4 or 2 to 4 people in a 100 square foot unit. But that's all the things that we need to work through with the managing agency and making sure that the planning and the building code and everything is up to par. But you've got it spot on that less is more, because they're not very big. Yeah, but it's better than a car. It's bigger than a car, right?
Yes,
so
yes, yeah, and it meets the building codes. And I mean, that's kind of the physical aspect I wanted to understand. I'm trying to flesh out a little more also of the sort of day-to-day things, because one of the I looked at the pallet shelters, the Everett built pallet shelters that were been used for a couple of years now in Santa Rosa, and looking at their experience of that. And an element of the pallet shelter actually was that it wasn't some place that you would be 24 hours a day, that you would be in and out of it, that there was a sense of community built up because people were outside of their shelters, because it wasn't designed to be something you'd be in 24 hours. And that community and the interactions of people as they used the bathrooms and laundry facilities and that sort of thing was a part of what was the environment that was designed in part to help these folks regularize their lives and recover. And I guess in that vein, as we're coming up in the middle of the year with a year of our own experience of this, I guess I'd like to put a bug in your ear that maybe after a year of this, it would be nice to know from the people who are managing this and maybe from some of the residents, is there a trend or a theme to people's trajectories? What got them into the pallet shelters, and what help did they get? What worked? Was there a particular path that helped them get and use the benefits of the pallet shelter to get on to more permanent housing? Essentially from that point, are we learning and adapting so that as we come up with decisions to spend more or to do things differently and locations and what their impacts on the neighborhoods would be. Maybe a year is kind of a good time to look at that and see, for all of us who are going to be trying to make decisions on this, how's it working, and build that model in our head of what's actually happening.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And certainly, I don't think we would be expanding the pallet shelter at EGM had we not had some initial success in understanding really what our chronically homeless individuals need. And they are learning a lot about how to build a community that is successful and how long it will take. And in that, with this expansion, we are also adding a larger community space. We are also adding, I should say, EGM has put forth their own financial resources to add a community space and to add 200 to 100 square foot units for staff to be able to do case management. And we're working with them to add, an additional cleaning sink and access to water and shower trucks. So we are building that kind of best practice for our community, and are finding it to be positive. And absolutely, I agree with you that I actually just today, I was like, I'm going to email Gospel Mission and tell them that we need a really robust report by July to give them a long time. And then I realized, well, it's only February. Let's slow down. But I totally agree with you. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fossey.
Thanks. Such great questions from my fellow council members. Thank you so much for the presentation. I am super thrilled about the direction and priorities for these one-time investments. I definitely a huge fan of the looking at the early learning and the childcare. That is a huge need going forward. And I also know that there is a huge need in this community, as well as a desire to address a lot of these human needs, challenges, and help our unsheltered neighbors. Integrated services are so important. It's a really key piece of the puzzle. So I'm glad to see the focus there and the kind of comprehensive approach that you guys are doing. So that's music to my ears. And thank you for Deputy Mayor Harper for his explanation and kind of emphasis on the lack of resources that are available, because that is pretty key for folks to understand in addressing these challenges, the kind of some of the barriers that we're hitting. And as someone that was a child of a single mother who went through homelessness, I can't overstate the value of having that kind of stability for children, and how that just, snowballs into greater rewards later on in life. So I am just thrilled that we're putting a focus on kind of these housing first models and helping our unsheltered folks get that kind of stability. And I also am a huge fan of Pallet and their business model. So all around, I'm just super excited with this. I do have one question. I'm not sure if it was addressed earlier when I was scribbling down some thoughts, but is this going to be brought to the new committee in more detail? Or is this going to be more of something that is addressed directly to council? I would assume that it would probably be the committee, correct?
Probably both, honestly. I think that it depends on timing. Whether the committee is going to have the opportunity to dig into it. If we have time to kind of co-develop it, yes, the committee is perfect. But if there's some urgency to timing, county grants or things like that, that will just kind of get to the council. So it'll be a balancing act, I suppose.
Awesome. I'm so excited for this and to learn more about what's coming down the pipeline. And I second Council Members Ryan's thoughts on the expanded details on some of those. So I look forward to looking at that too and setting in our priorities. Thanks so much for awesome, exciting presentation. It's good news.
Thank you. For my comments, I will just say thank you to my council members for asking such great questions. I admit that if we were briefed on some of these, I've forgotten what some of those are. So I'll look forward to getting a more detailed project description for a few of the items that are on this list. I think the categories that are here are great. These are obviously the areas that both are allowed under the funding source and also areas that certainly have a great area of need in our community. I think when we discussed this before, one of the questions that I had was really how are we identifying the needs, and do we have a way of determining that? I could see very easily that the need for shelter and homelessness support facilities could certainly, just looking at the numbers, probably take up the entire budget, even with the county partnership money, and same for behavioral health services and staff. And yet we've mostly allocated funding at this point. I guess we've done the pallet shelter, but we've done these Everett Forward grant funding. And I would be curious to hear a report of, how those have benefited the community. As I look at the economic recovery and some of the outdoor enhancements, those seem to be important. Maybe I'm not sure that they're as important as some of the other more pressing needs, but some of the things can certainly rise to the top of an immediate need. So I'm just kind of curious how we are thinking about allocating funds amongst these, all of the outdoor enhancements and all of the green areas that are in process and coming forward to council action soon make a lot of sense to me. How are we going to decide which of the orange things come forward for funding as well? And as the administration was developing this list, did you have a vetting process where some things just completely dropped off, even if they would have fit in under the funding source? So that's kind of a big question.
Yeah, we had, if you recall, we did a community survey in addition to kind of speaking with council. So we did get some community feedback as to where we should prioritize investments. And so that helped us form, kind of target these areas. And as far as again, there's more on that list than we could possibly fund. And so it really is up to you. We haven't done a needs assessment. We have the county's needs assessment that happens, and I've obviously participated in multiple economic recovery efforts, whether it's led by Greater Seattle Partners or Economic Alliance or Snohomish County, and kind of what the community needs. And that's where things like childcare and other things have risen to the top as a barrier to getting people back into the workplace. But we don't have data that is driving that, other than all of these organizations saying this is a #1 priority to get women back in the workforce and things like that. So it really is up to what our community has said is the priority, as well as what you all as council relay to us as the priority. If we want to stop action on some of these and do a greater assessment to help, I guess, collect some of that data, we could try to do that. But I think it's because we have more on that list than we can fund. I think it will really be up to you as policymakers to help us determine those investment priorities. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like with the homelessness, clearly we have great data to help inform that. We know, from the PIT counts, how many people are homeless in our community. Of course, people are seeing a lot of this in their everyday life as they see people who are unsheltered around in the community. But I'd be curious, for example, like early learning childcare. I know there's a need there, but do we have like a count of how many of Everett children who are eligible age for early learning are not getting it? Do we have counts of, how many people are looking for childcare. I mean, I don't know that there are statistics available in the same way that there are for the homelessness piece.
There
But
are
I'd be
some,
curious
Nick might have some from that we
I
use.
don't have the numbers in front of me, Council President.
No, just
But I believe that, I mean, the Bezos Academy targeted Everett as one of their early, action areas because of those numbers. So I do believe they have a lot of the data, maybe not complete and drilled down to the level that would be as instructive as it could be. But I think that, yeah, I do believe that data does exist. And
yeah.
I'll make sure to follow up with
Okay,
them.
whatever you've got that was helping inform you on your side as you developed the list would be really helpful. Like,
Absolutely.
for example, creating a South Everett Business Association. You know, my obvious question is, how does that fit in with the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County, and what's the need? Where are we finding the need there, and how are we identifying?
And
that
so the
as a need?
idea there, I mean, yeah, I'll just respond if I may. The idea there that we've heard as both Dan as well as Nicole and Julie and others have reached out to South Everett businesses is we haven't seen a connection and a community that is formalized in the way that we have downtown with our BIA. So a business improvement area could be a vehicle to better congeal that neighborhood and that region of our community around supporting each other to identify whether it's increased public safety presence or street cleaning or marketing, whatever the litany of things that BIAs typically accomplish. That was the idea. But again, it's not a yet mature concept. It was a discussion item of how can we better support South Everett businesses to succeed and compete in a ever growing competitive region that's beyond Everett. So that was the impetus for that particular idea.
Great.
And I'll anecdotally say, I mean, just last night I was at the library board meeting. I guess, Paula, you were there. And as we were having the discussion, one of the priority areas that came up in that very small group of people was connecting South Everett to North Everett, creating a center in South Everett. And, we've all talked about this. And so a lot of these ideas are things that our community has identified as issues. We don't necessarily say, okay, creating a South Everett Business Alliance is going to result in X amount of improvement, but these are all things that we have heard from our community or the businesses down there have asked for, or residents. And so is this an idea that we could use ARPA funds for or not? And you will again guide us with that.
Yeah. Okay, great. So from a process perspective, I guess I'll, as the council president, I would request that these do go through our committees. We've established these areas of focus, and I would like to see these things be vetted through the committee structure so that they understand what they are, even as the rest of us are going to have to come up to speed. And particularly when you look at the orange pending ones, where they're not fully fleshed out. They're, again, ideas, and totally understand that. But I would love to see our committees do some work digging in and understanding what is the problem we're trying to solve. And then does this seem to be a reasonable way to solve that problem, and just kind of get them up to speed. I think everything on here fits under one of our areas. And so it seems like that if we could add those to those committee focus areas, agendas for discussion and just kind of briefing and understanding what these are, that would be, I think, very helpful as they come forward to council for action. So the other question I have is, what is the council's, what is our action on this? Obviously, we're going to get $20.7 million of money. And so each of these things individually come forward for council approval of the spending?
Yeah,
and then,
so each will come back, and so what we've vowed to do for you, and the committees are great, so we can start to use the committees now that we have the structure in place. But we didn't want to wait too long with our 4 new colleagues here before we gave another update, because we have this
Yeah.
money sitting there and we're all working on it. So again, we want that continued feedback from council before we utilize staff resources to pursue these individual projects. The ones that Julie presented tonight are coming back to you more quickly. That's why we presented those in more detail.
Yeah, that makes sense. If they're in process, let's not wait to get the money out in the community. But again, the other ones could probably use a round in through the committee structure. So we'll look forward to hearing more about those. Anything else for the good of the order on this topic? I see a hand up. Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you very much. As I was thinking and listening, I was remembering you, I think Nick mentioned premium pay for essential workers. And then I heard getting women back into the workforce because, as y'all may know, they were the most affected, at least numbers wise and percentage wise. When ARPA funds are used towards essential workers, premium pay essential worker, is that moving forward? Can that be retro fit, whatever the word is? Somebody can say the word for me.
Retroactive.
Thank you. Retroactive, is it
Oh, poor
city
talented
workers?
kids. Get the word right.
Is it city workers, you know, our staff people, or can it be like the CARES grant where, you know, Fred Meyer had people working,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody had people working for 3 years, 2 years, however long it's been. Can they apply to the city to give their people money? And I know that it's not on this list, even in orange, unless I'm just missing it. But that is my question.
Yeah, a great question,
About essential
Councilmember
pay.
Vogely, and thank you. So yeah, I referenced the 5 categorical areas that are applicable for ARPA dollars, one of which, as you pointed out, is premium pay for essential workers. So ultimately, all the questions you just asked aren't questions I can answer. The category is an eligible expense. But in terms of the nuances of whether or not it can be retroactive or how one would apply that would be questions for finance and legal. So I guess unless Mayor Franklin has a different response, I would suggest we get back to you with you know, how that could be applied. Ultimately, like all of this, it would be a council decision in terms of allocating resources.
That is an acceptable
We'll
answer.
get that to you, Councilmember Vogely. And right now, there's obviously not any open application for anyone to just apply
Right.
to the city for ARPA. That would be
Right.
something we would have to create. I will tell you that as a city our size, those dollars would go very quickly if we paid them all out for that purpose. And we probably would not have the resources to do the work that we are currently have underway and pending in housing and homelessness.
Yeah, I totally hear that, and I'm just thinking about all the people that are about to, you know, be evicted, and all those mothers, and we're not going to have enough pallet shelters for all the people that are housed right now. Okay, thank you, but good answers, and I would love to hear some more answers forthcoming. Thanks.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. As noted at the start of the meeting and provided on the screen, I believe coming up here, you may contact Deb Williams in the council office for instructions on watching, listening, or participating in our weekly meetings. She can be reached by phone at 425-257-8703 or by email at dwilliams@everettwa.gov. With no further business and no executive session, we are now adjourned.
Thank you.